If you have ever said, just share, to your child and watch it accomplish absolutely nothing except a meltdown, I want you to know right up front that the problem was never your parenting. The problem is that sharing is a much bigger ask than it sounds like, and most young children are simply not ready to do it the way we are asking them to. But before we even get to the child side of this, I want to start somewhere most of us skips entirely with us. Because I think a lot of us, myself included, grew up with a slightly distorted idea of what sharing even is. Here is the distinction I want you to sit with for a second. If your child walks up to another kid and grabs a toy out of their hands without asking, it's not a sharing failure. That's a completely different problem. That's about boundaries and permission, not generosity. We tend to lump every toy conflict under the umbrella of sharing, and it muddies the advice we give ourselves and our kids. Real sharing is rooted in goodwill. It involves some kind of agreement between two people. It rests on a sense of balance, where both sides walk away with something. It is never about pressure, and it is definitely not about one kid getting something from another simply because they asked loudly enough, or cried the longest, or happened to be standing closest to an adult who wanted the conflict to end. Getting that distinction right as an adult in the room changes how you respond to almost every conflict that comes up. It also changes what you are actually teaching at the moment because give them whatever they are demanding and share when you are ready with someone you trust are two entirely different lessons, even though they can look identical from the outside. Okay, with that sorted, let's talk about why sharing itself is genuinely hard for a young child to act on, even when it is asked for respectfully, not grabbed. There are two separate skills hiding inside the word share, and many young children, especially under 5 or 6, are still missing on both of them. The first is the theory of mind, understanding that other people have their own separate thoughts, wants, and feelings that are different from yours. This starts developing around age 2, but it is nowhere close to fully formed for years afterwards. The second missing piece is impulse control, the brain's ability to pause between wanting something and grabbing it, which doesn't come fully online until somewhere between the 3 or 4, and even then keeps developing well into the elementary school. Put those two together, and just share is often asking a child to use two skills they are still building, usually in a moment of high emotion, which makes everything harder. It is a bit like asking someone to calmly explain calculus while they are also trying not to cry. The ask itself is a problem, not the child. So here's the part I really want you to take with you. Full mature sharing, the kind, rooted, genuine empathy and voluntarily generosity isn't something most children fully grasp until somewhere around age 7 or 8. Everything before this is practice, not failure to master it, and that means there is real benefit in starting gentle, low stakes, turn taking practice early. Small, supported, repeated moments that lay the ground for something children won't fully understand for years. The goal at any young age isn't mastery, it's exposure, without pressure and without the expectation that one good explanation will make it click permanently. Here is something else worth saying clearly, because I think it gets missed constantly in the most parenting advice. You cannot share the last cookie. You can only give it away. Sharing, by definition, requires that there is something left over for you too. Some version of balance, some sense that both people end up with a piece of the thing. If we tell a child to share their one and only stuffed animal, or the very last crack on the plate, we are not actually describing sharing anymore. We are describing total surrender. And then we are confused when they resist it the way most of us would resist giving away our only umbrella in a storm. If you want your child to eventually understand the difference between giving something up entirely and sharing something there is enough of, the language and the situation both need to reflect that difference honestly, every time, not just when it's convenient. Now, the practical part. If sharing itself is too big and asked developmentally, what do we actually do instead? Grab the word share to take turns. This sounds like a small wording change, but it solves a real cognitive problem. When you tell a young child to share, what they often hear is giving this up, possibly forever, especially if their sense of time is still developing. But it's almost your turn again, tells them something completely different. The toy, the swing, the crayon is coming back. That distinction changes everything about how willing they are to let go in the moment. Practice this at home first, in low stakes moments between siblings or during quiet play, before you ever expected to hold up on the playground with a near stranger. A simple visual timer like sand, a kitchen timer, even a phone timer they can watch count down helps make the abstract concept of later into something concrete they can actually see happening in real time. And here is a detail that's often left out of this advice entirely. When the item does come back to them, say so out loud. See, it came back and it's still yours and it's safe. Children build trust in the whole system of turn taking specifically by experiencing over and over that giving something up isn't the same as losing it forever. That trust doesn't come from one conversation, it comes from dozens of small, repeated proofs. I also want to call out something that rarely gets mentioned in this type of conversations. Turn taking and sharing only really works if a child has some baseline sense of security about their belongings. If toys get thrown away or handed to a sibling or donated without their knowledge or permission, if the word mine gets treated like a character flaw in your house, a child has very little actual reason to believe that anything will reliably come back to them. Willingness to share in children, and honestly in adults too, tends to grow out of a felt sense of abundance, not out of scarcity or fear. A child who genuinely trusts that their things are respected and protected is somewhat counterintuitively more willing to loosen their grip than one who feels like everything could disappear at any moment without warning. And please try to avoid reaching for labels in these moments. Don't be greedy. Don't be selfish. You are being mean. These phrases don't teach the underlying skill. They just attach shame to a moment that's often developmentally appropriate, and shame is a remarkably poor teacher. It tends to make children more protective and more anxious about their belonging, not less. One more point, and I think this one matters more than most people realize: modeling. Not just sharing in front of your child, but visibly enjoying it when you do. Children notice the difference between a parent who shares with a flat, resigned expression and a parent who genuinely seems to light up handing something to a friend, a neighbor, or a sibling. If the only version of sharing your child witnesses looks like quiet obligation, that's the model they're absorbing, no matter what you tell them in the moment afterwards. Kids are remarkably good at reading the emotional subtext underneath our words, often better than they are at following the words themselves. So here's a simple plan you can use the next time this comes up. First, tell what's happening without judgment. You are both really wanting the same toy right now. Second, introduce turn taking, not surrender. Let's take turns. You go first, then the toy goes to them, then it comes back to you. Third, make the turn visible and say it out loud when it happens. So trust builds from evidence, not just from your words. This plan won't eliminate every conflict, and the tired, hungry, or overstimulated child can blow past even the most carefully worded approach on a hard day. That's not a sign that the approach is wrong, and it's definitely not a sign you're failing. So, to bring this all together, real sharing involves goodwill and balance, never pressure or grabbing. And that distinction is something we as adults need to hold on to first before we ever try to teach it. Young children aren't fully capable of mature, voluntarily sharing for years, but they can begin gentle, low stakes turn taking practice well before that. You can never truly share the last of something, only give it away. And the language we use should reflect that honestly. And underneath all of it, the real foundation is a child who feels secure enough in what's theirs to risk loosening their grip, even for a moment, because they trust it will come back. If you found this helpful, please subscribe. I share honest, research backed parenting strategies like this every week.